Sup people, Sam here. In Lathrix's latest adventure mode video, he uses a submarine with a periscope, which in my opinion is a brilliant idea because thanks to a couple of cameras on this periscope, he can sit comfortably in his CIC and be safe from enemy fire, while being able to see what's happening around him in first person. The CIC is very simple, just a couple of cameras on a stick basically. Which is fine for adventure mode, but like, you can do better. I didn't do this myself. A friend of mine, Helius, who has nothing to do with the ship Helius, he just shares the name by chance, built this. But it's like Lathrix's idea, but you add a couple of hundred IQ points to it. It's super awesome. What you're seeing here is the submarine. The submarine's aesthetics are about as creative as the name. It's called T4 and it's shaped like a cigar. Wow, creative. But that's not what this thing is about. What you have here is a little blob with just 3 cameras and some miscellaneous detection equipment. Now, just 3 cameras? Well, how do you look to the side? Well, the whole thing is on a turret, so you have full 360 degrees vision. Great. How does this look from inside? Well, let me switch to first person. Not this way, this direction. That's me. And if I look at the screen, well, I have a very nice vertical screen, so I can see the submarine down here next to my chair. And I have pretty good vision all around. I have a little control panel up there, which means that I can go into submerged mode or surface mode. So if I press surface mode, I can see that the piston retracts and we go to the surface. And if I go back into submerged mode, then you can see, even from the CIC here, well, the camera, it stays stable. Sometimes the camera gets pushed down below the waterline, but you can see the submarines submerging and the camera stays right above the water. It does that basically by using breadboard and calculating the altitude of the craft currently. You can actually see it bobbing up and down a bit while the craft moves. Okay, but that's not all of the features, by far not. If I select turret mode 2, you can actually see how we're moving around. We can so we have a full 360 degree vision. Obviously the resolution isn't great and it's a bit choppy and the cameras don't align perfectly, but that's just cameras. They're not optimal. And right here in the bottom left corner you can see some other views, which aren't too important right now. Okay, so far so good. You can see here at the bottom this ring with 0, 90 and -90. Those are symbols to orientate yourself around about where is the submarine currently facing. I think you could probably have like a big arrow on the bottom or something to make it even more obvious. But that's basically just, if I'm looking to the side, I can immediately say, okay, I'm looking at the left and the bow of my ship is pointed towards the right. You can actually see it under the water here a bit. You can also see that I have this red arrow that's pointing everywhere I'm looking at. Well, what is this? For that we need to spawn a ship first. And now suddenly you can see this red arrow is pointed at the marauder no matter where I'm looking. So even if I'm looking at the completely wrong direction, I can immediately see, okay, red arrow, the marauder is somewhere over there. Okay, found it. There it is. Getting shredded by the cannons. Awesome. There is one significant disadvantage, however, and that is that you cannot simultaneously control the gun and the CIC. Well, I guess you could, but then you would always have to control the gun and the CIC. You couldn't switch between the two. So in order to tackle that problem, Helius has included the auto aim system, which is the red button up here. If we click that, you can see it switches to enabled, and now the CIC will automatically aim at the enemy, which means that I am now free to pick up the gun and shoot it over there. But if we want, we can obviously just switch back to manual mode by selecting the weapon slot 2 again, which allows us to happily look around and see if there are any other targets around, and obviously if we want to find our marauder again, we just have to follow the red arrow. Brilliant! Okay, so time for part 2, the explanation how it works. I moved the whole setup over to my test platform, so if we jump in right here, we don't have the auxiliary screens, but they don't matter right now, and if we move over we can see ourselves and have a little bit of recursion. Funny. It's actually really interesting that like on the middle screen in the camera is blank. On the bottom screen of the camera is blank, but we can see the middle screen, so basically the camera will prevent you from putting feedback into itself. That's very curious. That's funny. If we move around to the back of the screen, you can see it's a whole mess of pistons and spin blocks and video projectors, hologram projectors. Most of all that is just purely decorative stuff, so as to move the screens into the right position, and also all of this text here is using the hologram projectors. So most of them are really just to hold the screen, not more. Then we have right here a 360 elevation turret. This is the guy that's responsible for the red arrow. So right now he's pointing downwards, obviously, because that's its resting position, so the red arrow doesn't show up if there is no enemy around. If we go into control all, then we can see the arrow is right here, because now we are controlling this turret as well. But if we let go of the control, it goes down to its resting position and puts the arrow somewhere into the ground. And back here we see the second turret, which is trying to aim at the enemy, but because its axis, we are looking at the axis right now, so it can rotate like this or like this, which basically rotates the arrow, so it always points towards the enemy. And even if we take over manual control over the turret, because the turrets that control the arrow aren't selected right now, the arrow will continuously always point at the enemy. Awesome! Also, I stand corrected. This turret actually does listen to your manual input as to move the arrow up and down, so the arrow always remains in your field of vision. Down here we just have a firing control computer to use the guns. We have somewhere in here we have a one-axis turret that actually moves the whole thing. We have a couple of pistons to move the seat, the chair, into the perfect position. Plus the whole thing is also gyro stabilized, so even if the ship moves around below you, the CIC will keep pointing at the same angle. As for the periscope, it just has a local weapons controller and a breadboard, an extremely simple breadboard that just takes the vehicle altitude, does a little bit of math to it to give out the right number, and just feeds that number into a propulsion, which is then used by these pistons, so that when we go below the water, the pistons will start stretching out, because as you can tell here, because we take -a and divide it through a constant that you just have to figure out by experimentation, we get this value here, and this value grows if we go lower, and that means that also the piston grow and the periscope moves out of the water. It's as simple as that. Then there's a bonus feature of this ACB controller up here, which obviously uses ACBs, and a very simple ACB computer, which is up here, which switches between surface mode and submerged mode. But that's something you can figure out on your own. That's too specialized for this submarine. It's not really something I want to touch on with the CIC right now. Alright, you guys, let's have a look at... oh, crap. Did we already kill it? Okay. Okay, you guys, thank you for watching. I hope you found it informative. To be honest, I'm a bit burned out from the devs right now. I've been working on the Helios again, and it's just getting really tiring because I made one very big mistake when you're designing it, and that is basically that I chose form over function. And like seriously, just never do that in design. Always let your function lead the shape that you bring it in, because what this led to is I have these very sweet looking, very awesome engine pods here, which are absolute hell to include in the general design, and add weapon systems to and everything like that. And it's just making me have to do a lot more work, and I just don't know where to begin. And I just have a bit of a creativity hole right now. It's also insanely hot these past few weeks, and I'm really I'm a winter person. I cannot manage heat, and I'm really not enjoying this. Yeah. That's what to say. So I basically just got extremely lucky that Helios actually made the submarine and provided me with some content that I can upload to the channel for you guys, because otherwise there probably wouldn't have been done anything, or just me ranting about creativity and making a little pep talk more to myself than to you. But yeah, that would have been the alternative to it. If you would be interested in that kind of thing, like how to be creative, how to do testing, how can you how do I come up with these crazy ideas, and how and what tips I have for you so you can do it yourself, then tell me in the comments, and maybe I will do something like that, where I go a bit more meta and talk not about the specific design, but more about just how to be creative, not really in a aesthetically creative way, but more in like a technologically creative way, because I think that's something, part of creativity that's often overlooked. You know, you always see people drawing, or you see people making music or whatever, but you there is an insane amount of creativity also involved in just making technical solutions and solving problems. That is an whole own area that's really just right up my alley. If you want, feel free to check out Helios' YouTube channel. He does mostly Minecraft stuff, but he also made a very interesting video about Lua, which automatically assigns propulsion to all of your propulsion components on your ship, depending on their position compared to the center of mass and stuff like that, and also changes with thrust vectoring, for example. Super interesting, super useful. He is actually in the process of more or less teaching me Lua, so there might be some very, very interesting Lua projects coming up in the future. I hope I will be able to more or less provide an explanation for it, and ideally also an explanation that goes to the point that you could probably even replicate it yourself. If I really get into it, I might even make some Lua tutorials, because there are very few resources about that online right now. But that's like super far into the future, so don't get your hopes up just yet. I know I already said it, but once again, thank you guys for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you around next week. Hopefully, when I will ideally have something else to show to you. See ya.